Hey everyone, welcome to the Intelligent Conversations podcast, where we believe everyone has a form of intelligence that resides within them. Our goal is to encourage these type of conversations for our audience to listen to. Without further ado, welcome to the show. Hey everyone, this is your host Josh Baker with the Intelligent Conversations podcast. Today I have Christina Stanton on. She's a licensed tour guide in New York City, so I'm sure she has a lot of interesting stories to share with us regarding that. She's also published 2 books, one of which is about 9/11. So Christina, I don't know if you know this, but I was not even alive when 9/11 took place because I was born in 2002. So, do you think you could share maybe your experience on that day? Because, we just had the 20-year anniversary. I kind of want to hear about that.
Yeah, it was a big anniversary. So that morning of September 11th, just a little bit of backstory. I was 31. I was newlywed, about a year and a half. My husband was 35, and we got an apartment 6 blocks away from the World Trade Center site. We got this killer apartment on the 24th floor of a building that was, as it was gorgeous. It was a 1931 old bank, but it was really the view from the terrace that I just fell in love with, and it overlooked the Twin Towers and the World Trade Center site. So we'd only moved there July the 7th of 2001. So our stuff was still in boxes, and in every way, kind of just felt like we were just starting out in, from a new marriage to a new apartment. We just got a new dog, and so everything was like new, and I was just so excited about everything. And then that morning, I was still asleep, and my husband was awake, and he came and shook me awake because the impact of the plane hitting the North Tower actually shook our building. So we knew right away something bad had just happened, at the very least, an earthquake. So he came and shook me awake and said, "Something's happened. Let's go on the terrace and see what's going on." We went onto the terrace, and we saw flames and smoke coming out of the North Tower, and we were just like transfixed, just watching this crazy scene and listening to people scream on the street below, all the sirenses of the police cars and the ambulances. And all of a sudden, over our right hand shoulder, the second plane came and went right over our heads and swooped right in front of us and turned and went into the South Tower. And I don't know if shockwaves blew us back into the apartment. I don't know if I stumbled back into our apartment and fainted. I don't know, but what I know is the next thing that happened was I woke up on our living room floor with my dog jumping on me. And we evacuated and ran down the 24 flights, me still in my pajamas with bare feet, didn't even put on shoes. And we walked to nearby Battery Park. So that's a 25-acre park, which is at the very, very tip, southern tip of Manhattan. And that's where we were when the Twin Towers came down and covered us with dust and debris and surrounded us by smoke. And, we were surrounded by water pretty much down there because that's where, again, kind of the New York Harbor and the East River and the Hudson River meet, the Manhattan land. And we all felt trapped. And it was a scary, completely scary situation. My husband and I told each other goodbye. And then we were actually evacuated by a boat and dropped off in New Jersey and didn't get back to our apartment for 2 weeks. So it was just kind of a big mess. Obviously, our story doesn't compare to the almost 3,000 people who died that day, who had a horrifying situation, but ours was no less horrifying in its own way, and to the point where we were pretty sure that we were going to die and saying goodbye to each other. We're not really dramatic people. We just thought any worse than this, and that's the end for us. And yeah, it kind of just went on from there. We were unemployed. We suffered PTSD. Our dog almost died well, he did end up dying from 9/11. He got sick right away. My husband found out one of his fraternity brothers died in the North Tower. And it was just, yeah, it just sucked. It was awful. And it kind of just defined the rest of our lives, to tell you the truth. So I totally understand that you weren't born, Josh, and lots of people weren't born, during that time. But it's so funny because when you reach my age at 51, 20 years really isn't all that long. It's not all that far away. I know it might seem at your age, but it really isn't. It's kind of like just, it happened yesterday in a way. So, and for us, for all of us who lived through it, it did just happen yesterday.
Yeah, I totally get that because I've talked with my parents about that too, and they're like, yeah, a decade for us is almost like a year of when I was your age. It's
Right.
like time seems like to just all of a sudden just speed up, and you're like, it's the weirdest
Yeah.
thing. But I mean, I think it's interesting because I mean, I just recently graduated high school, and uh, when we studied American history in specific, we would never get past the world wars. And I was like, come on, I want to learn like stuff that actually happened like recently, like in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, like especially 9/11. That's a
Yeah.
huge event, but they don't teach that
Dude,
stuff. So
I've
I
heard
don't
that
know.
so much. I've heard that so much that a lot of people your age didn't end up studying it much. That it's almost it didn't it's not even not in a lot of textbooks. I mean, it's like it's considered kind of current events. So yeah, I have definitely noticed like in people your age, the history that you've learned about it is pretty one note and one dimensional if it was deep at all, you know. So I think it's just it kind of seems like it's what your teachers chose to tell you in history classes of what they themselves knew about it. Would
Yeah,
you agree with
I would
that?
agree with that because especially since most of our teachers actually lived through that event too, they kind of gave their point of view on that event and like where they were specifically in that event. Because I mean, I remember one of my teachers, he was like, there's only two like events that I remember exactly where I was and like what was happening around me, and that's 9/11 and the Columbine shooting because obviously he's a teacher.
Oh, right,
Yeah,
right,
and
right,
then
right.
he's just like, yeah, those were two events that just shocked the world. And he's like, and the weird thing was is he was like an orchestra teacher, so like we would have one
Ah,
we would have one day that we would just learn about 9/11. That's it. Like, and I was kind of
yeah,
like bummed. I'm like, man,
awesome.
I love current events. Why can't we teach this in history? I don't know. Maybe, I mean, you've written a book about it. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And uh,
Yeah, yeah, and interesting because it kind of ties in with what you were just saying. So, and it's not to knock your teachers at all, but honestly, what I had learned throughout the years is that a lot of the full story of 9/11 not never got around, never made it in the media. So I feel like people who live outside of New York, you heard a lot about the planes, you heard a lot about terrorists and terrorism, you heard a lot about the rescue workers, and you heard a lot about the towers and the Pentagon. But like for instance, when I just told you about that I was rescued by boat. Did you know that I was rescued within the largest boat evacuation in history, larger than World War II in Dunkirk? That 500,000 people were taken off the island of Manhattan? Right. And you didn't because, like, your teacher probably didn't know that either. It's actually very few people know that. Not knocking your teacher, it's not his or her fault. A lot of these kind of stories, like, again, the largest boat evacuation history just never made the rounds in media, and I don't know why. But I started realizing that as a tour guide. So, like Josh, let's say like you and your group came up to New York City, and I would tour you. For the last 20 years, I've been saying, okay, Josh, and all of y'all, tell me what you knew, what you've been taught about 9/11. And so I've been doing that. So I've almost been formulating in my own mind what didn't make the cut or what you like collectively you all hadn't heard of. And that's what my book is about. Is these kind of stories like the boat evacuation that clearly never made it around. And I think it's important to know. I mean, it kind of just makes the scope of that day a lot more in depth and layered and textured. And I think that's important when you're telling any piece of history. It's not just like here's the Holocaust, blah blah blah, people died. You need to like there's a lot going on into the Holocaust, for instance, that you need to understand the personal stories to connect your head knowledge to your heart knowledge. And the same thing with 9/11. There's some head knowledge, but there's a lot that's not connected up with people's hearts. You know what I'm saying? It's just kind of like facts and figures. So I was trying to battle against that, to tell you the truth, and just put my voice in there and hope that people will understand that day better.
yeah, I like what you're doing there because again, like especially the younger generation, they're growing up not knowing, especially all the facts, and then with the internet, you never know what you're gonna get. There's gonna be
Exactly. Hello. Exactly. Good point. Great point.
but like I actually think it's funny because what this is kind of a little side note, but one time we were in a language arts class and this one teacher took us to the library and the librarian was teaching us how to spot like fake information on the internet and
Oh,
I
interesting.
raised my hand at the end and I was like, hey, you realize like something in your bibliography is from a website that's not exactly, a trusted site. And she's like, oh shoot. And then like her took it out. I just thought it was so like ironic. It was not just what reminded me of something real quick, but it
Wow,
was
that is
it
funny.
was funny because yeah, I couldn't believe that we were learning about how to spot fake information on the internet, and
And then
there
she had some fake information there. But isn't that a sign of the times? Like, who do you really trust? I've been talking about 9/11 in front of groups, whether it's tours or I talk about it at like church groups. I even go to prisons and talk about it. I enjoy educating about 9/11. It's kind of a passion. It's kind of a motivator for me. And so I have a page on Facebook, and I've written a lot of articles about 9/11 that specifically got picked up for the 20th anniversary. And somebody wrote in saying, "I don't believe you were blown back into your building." And of course, people kind of said, you weren't there, blah blah blah. I remember thinking, well, he doesn't have to. It's not. It's he can believe whatever he wants to believe, but I have a firsthand account, and I can only speak to what I know and what I experienced. Rejected or not, firsthand accounts and are hard to dispute. That's just what I experienced. That now, please believe what you want to believe, but I am not making this up. This is what happened to me. And the same thing with you, Josh. Like, you'll go through stuff, and in your life, or if you haven't already, and somebody will be like, and you'd be like, I'm sorry, but that's what happened. You're like, that's how I experienced it. Like, how can you literally like throw my personal experience under the
it,
bus,
it's almost like they're trying to
So
like
yeah,
rewrite your own personal history. It's like I don't know how you can do that. But yeah,
exactly.
I kind of want to
Mm.
I want to hear a little bit more about. I mean, you kind of got me interested about like how 500,000 people were evacuated
It's the
across the
coolest
river. That
story. And
that
not only that, but I'm almost kind of pissed it's not out there because it's the coolest story ever. Okay, so listen to this. So there were thousands of us that were trapped in Battery Park. And we were totally trapped. We couldn't get out. I mean, Manhattan is very small and very narrow. And we were surrounded by dust and debris and smoke. We couldn't breathe. We were surrounded by water, and the Twin Towers was the only route where you could like try to bypass, but you're going straight into the danger. So the Coast Guard was sending fire boats up the Hudson to try to put out the fires raging at the World Trade Center site by these fire boats, and they saw that all of us were trapped, and people were pitching themselves into the Hudson and the New York Harbor trying to swim to like Jersey and Staten Island and Governor's Island. They knew people were desperate. So the Coast Guard issued a CB radio call and said, okay, local boat owners, boat operators, um, get your rig, get your boat, and go over to Battery Park, pick people up. Don't care where you drop them, but there's a lot of people in danger. Take them to safety. And I think they even had like a meeting point before they were pitched up, but people didn't do that. Boat owners heard that and just went straight to Battery Park. And all of a sudden, I just remember looking out the water and seeing all of these boats coming toward us. It was like this crate. I was like, oh my God, where are all these boats coming from? And to tell you, I didn't get my question answered because I kind of didn't care. I just like, I see a boat. I'm desperate. I want to get off this island. That's all I care about. I'll ask questions later. you know? So, but it turns out that so many boats responded. I think I read, what did I read? 150 boats. That's a lot. I mean, it is. There is a lot of boats in that area because it's next to the ocean. Blah blah blah. There's a lot of bodies of water, but that's a lot of boats, and over 800 like dock hands and captains got on the man these boats. They were volunteers, and some of them did it all day. Literally, they went across the Hudson, for instance, all day, picking people up, throwing people off, picking people up, throwing people off. And it's such a heroic thing. And not that they were putting themselves into jeopardy. I mean, they didn't know if more attacks were going to happen. And as it turns out, they were breathing in that poisonous dust that basically, when the towers came down, it devolved and pulverized into poisonous matter and poisonous material We were inhaling it, they were inhaling it, and a lot of boat captains and dock hands have died because they got cancer from that crappy, poisonous dust. But it's a wonderful story because when you hear something so ugly and so gross and so mean and nasty like 9/11, what kind of offsets it is knowing that a lot of people risk their lives to help other people. It's almost like the worst of humanity and the best of humanity. And to hear those stories together, there's just something really lovely, and it's almost like you can connect with it more. And there's something motivating because you can think like, Josh, like if I mean, God forbid, like a 9/11 happens in your lifetime. But when you hear these stories like this, don't you think sometimes like, what would I do? I'd like to think that I would help somebody in need, and it's almost that's
Yeah.
a I would like to think it's a typical reaction. And hearing hero stories, I almost feel like gets our brains wrapped around the fact that anybody can be a hero. And I'd like to think that I might be a hero in people's time of need. So I think we need those hero stories, and that's why I love the boat
Yeah,
evacuation
I
story.
that I love that perspective on thing. It actually kind of reminded me of I haven't actually read this, but I've read experts of it. It's a book by C.S. Lewis. I'm trying to remember the name,
Ooh,
and it's
you're a C.S. Lewis guy. Oh my goodness.
but they're talking about like pretty much how to make a devil, and
Your tape letters,
yeah,
probably.
I think that's it. Yeah, and uh, what was interesting is like they're talking to this person, and it was like, so should we start a war or whatever? Because everyone's killing each other, and he's like, well,
Yes.
actually, maybe not, because it actually brings people closer together and more united,
Right.
and
Right. Very
it's
good.
an interesting perspective. I feel like there's always balance in like pretty much all things. That always the negative will always balance out the good, and even if like sure, I mean even in today's day and age, the bad will always be in the front news. Like that's what because everyone wants to know what's going on, and that's what generates revenue for those companies. But what you have to remember, there's always good people that offset that bad news. Like especially
Yeah.
when it
Yeah.
comes
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
9/11, I
Tell me
remember
this.
hearing
Oh my gosh. Killed
something
me.
where it was like uh someone was saying that like the reason why it was the South Tower that was second, right?
Yeah.
And that
But the first
yeah,
to fall.
and okay, yeah. So it was the second one to get hit though, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. The
so
South Tower.
I just remember someone saying that like when the North Tower got hit, that in the South Tower someone gave out the command to like, all right, start like evacuating the South Tower, and it's just like who is this guy? Like there's a lot of like unheard heroes, especially in 9/11. I mean,
Yes.
with the boat story too, I bet half those people go unrecognized. I don't know if I kind of want to hear. Do you have any like specific examples of an unheard hero that you would say deserves a lot of credit for that day?
Yes. Oh my gosh, there's so many. There's so many. I think of the dude. I think his name last name was Cruz. I would have to look it up, but no one's. I read about him and like I had to dig to find out about this guy. So there's this man who was working at the Mercer Hotel. Okay, so the Mercer Hotel's in Soho. Soho's not far from the World Trade Center site, but it's not so close either. He was an elevator repair guy. He saw that the towers had been hit. He made his way down. Everybody was going north and going away from the towers. He went towards it. Turns out, um, unfortunately, the elevator guys who normally worked in the tower were told to evacuate. But guess what? 200 people were trapped in the elevators, completely trapped, no way to get out. They were locked in. Literally, the mechanism that kept people from falling, in normal times or something weird happening in elevators is the same mechanism that locked them in. And I can't think of a worse kind of like death being locked into a small little elevator. This guy and all the elevator guys were let go and they evacuated, they left, and there was nobody to release them. So this elevator repairman gets down to the towers, realizes that whoa, that people are trapped there and there's no one to help. He wasn't working there. This wasn't a building that he was associated with. These weren't people he knew, but he got to work on trying to release those people from the elevators. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like he was successful, and unfortunately, he lost his life. But he had no more affiliation, no more connection with all that, he could have just walked away. He was already far away in Soho. And I mean, I could easily look up his name real quick because I used to write about him. But I just find there's a ton of stories just like that. And that guy, I mean, what a heroic thing to do. It wasn't his job, wasn't his people, wasn't his buildings, and yet. So I could just literally go on. There are so many people who literally, or have you heard of Wells Crowther?
Uh-oh.
Not too far from your age, 24-year-old dude. He was known as the man with the red bandana. Okay, so people identified who ended up living, who evacuated the building. They said a man in a red bandana saved me. So his parents were reading up. He died, by the way, in 9/11. His parents were reading the newspaper and said, "Our son wore a red bandana. He was always wearing a red bandana." They put two and two together, and long and short of it is their 24-year-old son. He wasn't a rescue worker. He was just, he was a schmo working at at one of the towers. He was an office guy, just like all of us would be. He rose up, took on the role of a rescuer. He saved at least 18 people, if not tons more. He was 24. He lost his
Wow.
life. He went into Rambo mode. And he had on a red bandana. So now I understand that his college, and I'm not familiar I forgot what his college is. It spends a day wearing red bandanas in memory of him. And I mean, amazing guy,
That
24.
that's the
Amazing.
coolest thing I've ever heard. I mean, especially I feel like a lot of people, like, it's almost unexpected too. Like, people that typically wouldn't usually, you're like, wait, really? They're the ones that are out there that are standing up, and like you're like, what? Like, they're the ones helping people and like being the
Right,
heroes.
right,
And then
right.
it's almost some of the people that you expected that are like, oh, they would be there for me or whatever. Like, and they're the ones freaking hightailing it. They're like, get me out of here. Like, me. And it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
I almost want to say, I want to be careful with my words here, but you have to have, like, again, it's a balance act. I think you have to have a little bit of like personal, like, you don't want to be a people pleaser too much, because if you're a people pleaser, I feel like you're too nice, and then when the big moments occur, then it's like, get me out of here. Like, you've never actually focused on yourself enough. But where if you have a little bit of
Mm,
focusing on yourself, then
mm,
you're like, hey, I like, you can actually make a decision for yourself. You'll say, hey, this something bad's happening. I think I can actually do something good. Whereas other people, they've never had that conversation with themselves. And when disaster strikes, they're like, oh shoot. And then it's all of a sudden it just reverts back to them. And when they have that conversation with themselves, they just scram. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I wouldn't say, like, yes, protect yourself, but I mean, in order to be a hero, I would say you have to at least be able to look inside and say, hey, like, what can I do to help? And I don't know.
Right, no,
What would you?
that's a good balance. So you have to have a balance of, like, you want to, you have your self-preservation and you want to live, but if you can help others, are you able to do that and help others, but also like take care of yourself at the same time? It's, what I feel like. So I'm 51. Sometimes I look back and I think, what would I tell somebody like Josh your age? And I know this sounds that this may sound weird, but you know what has helped me through life, especially in situations like that, is having good reflexes. So let me tell you, like, about reflexes. Like, one thing I think that benefits everybody is being able to make quick decisions and be aware of your surround and making a quick decision would entail many things. Part of it is you have to be aware of your surroundings. Who's next to you? Do you sense any danger? You're calculating what's next, what's in front of you, what's behind you. If you see it's danger, you're able to calculate that danger kind of quickly, where you stand in the midst of it, where others stand in the midst of it. I just feel like developing good reflexes is a worthwhile endeavor, because I've ended up in my lifetime needing those reflexes, and like sometimes, like I was actually going by some, I don't know what, how, some power box that was sparked fire the other day, and there was a girl who was just kind of looking at it, and she was kind of taking everybody's space. Like everybody was trying to do a wide swath around it, but we had to go around her because I mean, my first thought was reflexes, sweetheart, work on those reflexes. But I just remember thinking like you're in danger. You're kind of putting us in danger, and you want to just be quicker in the game because you don't. Sometimes you don't get a second. What would you even say? You don't get a second chance to make some decisions that'll be best for you and best for others. So developing good reflexes is something good at your age, you know.
I actually like that you mentioned that because I mean I'm gonna kind of relate it here to sports or whatever because I did some sports in school or whatever, and uh, I especially when it came to track, I was a sprinter, and it was all about reflexes. And I mean,
Oh
of
yeah.
course, when you're in danger, it's like you only get one chance. But in a way, it's like we get those second chance. We get to practice it. So I like sports in the way that like it teaches you like you need to actually react like fast, and you need to be
Excellent.
uh like especially when the gun goes off for track and field, it's like it's set and then bam, and then you just like you got it. It's the quick muscle fibers, all that fun stuff, and you just
I'm telling you, man, that's going to help you in life. That's going to help you in life. That's a good skill to
yeah. And
have.
I like that. I really like that you said that because I mean it even applies to your mind too. Like you have to be able to react quickly in your mind because I mean as much as
Yeah,
we want
I
it
know.
to cooperate, sometimes our mind and our body do not agree with each other. Like sometimes our body's like go
Yeah.
go 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 go, and then our mind's like whoa, I can't do this. Like are you crazy? Or it's the vice versa. And I really like that you mentioned that. So thank you. So I mean that actually kind of answered a question that I was gonna ask you, and it's like, but would you say that's the one piece of advice you'd give to someone if like to anyone in the world if you could, would that be your one piece of advice?
No, not necessarily. In what kind of scenario? If or just saying, just in general
Yeah,
advice.
just in like general advice, just kind of out there, like one piece of advice with the world,
Okay.
what would it
You
be?
know what I would say? Challenge yourself. Do something that's the ultimate challenge. For me, you know what it was? It was moving from a small town in Florida to New York City when I was 23. I didn't know anybody. I had very little money, and it scared the crap out of me. Let me tell you. I didn't sleep for like 2 years because it was scary and it was expensive and I didn't have any skills and I was not very employable and I got lost a lot, meaning like I don't have a great sense of direction, which you need anywhere. So but you know what? Doing It's almost like doing the thing I feared. In a way I wanted to do it, but I also feared it. But doing it opened up all of these doors to essentially the rest of my life, right? And so it's almost like do something that's an ultimate challenge. It could be a sports thing, meaning like what about an ultra marathon or whatever. But just do something that is an ultimate challenge because and maybe even I mean you can do it at any age, but if you make some of these kind of choices when you're young, it almost sets the tone for your life. Like, hey, I did an ultra marathon at age 21, and that taught me that working hard is going to achieve a level of stability. It's almost like challenging yourself, especially at your age, will give you some serious life like bedrock to build your life on. And just getting to know your own limits. Like I when I was growing up, my parents said, oh, you can do anything you want. Actually, no. Dude, in some ways I am not the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree. And I say that knowing that I have some limitations, but you know what? The stuff that I can do, I'm seriously good at. But it's almost like knowing yourself to know, like, okay, you know what? I mean, not closing the door necessarily, but just saying, hey, I'm kind of challenged in that way. So, I'm going to go with my strengths, and I've got some, and I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to really develop that. Or, I'm not so good at this area. So, here's what I'm going to do to make sure I can do the best I can, knowing that I'm compromised there. And so, knowing yourself is going to challenging, and knowing yourself, I'm telling you, it's going to do some just really put your life in a direction that's ultimately going to bring you some happiness, and fulfillment, maybe. So that's what I would say, I guess.
Yeah, that's actually really like really good advice because I think a lot of, especially I don't want to say this, but I feel like a lot of my generation, especially, I don't soft. I think we're kind of soft in a way, like especially, and I think there's multiple sides to blame. Like, I mean, our parents probably gave us a lot more than we probably should have deserved, and then at the same time, though, we were kind of whiny about it, and like, there's all these other scenarios, and I would almost say that in a way, like they've never experienced anything hard. And I'm seeing this right now. A lot of kids are going out to college and doing these things, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, what? Like it's something hard for them, and it's like challenges, especially. And they're like, wait, mom and dad, like, are you gonna? And they're like, no, you're on your own now. Like you're supposed to figure it out. And you're like, what? Like, and it's just, and it just hits you like full train. And that, I would say in a way, like at the time I was said no way, but like at a time when I was 14, like really hard times just came, and I'm not going to mention them here because it's kind of personal, but like just really just hard challenges, and my parents just like, you know what, you're just gonna have to deal with it and just
Yeah.
learn from it. And in a way it almost prepared me from now, so like now I look back and I'm like, that's the greatest thing that could have happened to me. But then in that moment I was like,
This
this
sucks.
sucks.
Yeah.
So now I almost look at scenarios where I'm like, this sucks, and I'm like, oh, you're gonna look back in 5 years and you're gonna be like, dude, that was the greatest thing that happened to
Oh,
me. And
really? Really?
I I I kind of want to hear maybe some thoughts about that. Would you say that some of your biggest challenges are some of your greatest moments as well?
Yes. Yes. Okay, and this is getting personal. Okay, we're getting personal here. I dated a dude for a few years, and this was my mid 20s. And I don't know what I was blinded by. We were so not good together. But I had it in my head, I want this to work. And I gave it too much. And we weren't a match, and I just wouldn't let it go, right? Until he kind of cut me loose, which is great because we shouldn't have we went way too far. That song by Taylor Swift, nice to meet you. Where you been? That was actually a very accurate song. Anyway, but that was our relationship. So when it finally ended after a couple of years, I was so bummed, and I felt bad about myself. I felt kind of unlovable, unwanted, and kind of even like it just really did a number on me and my self esteem. I met my husband uh, not too long after this guy and maybe a year after this guy and I broke up. And he was just the nicest, sweetest. The other guy was full of drama and a big gregarious personality, which is fine. But my husband, in contrast, was soft spoken and sweet and loving, and he's very religious, and he's a very happy man, and very loving. He loves that dude loves everybody, just loves everybody. And to tell you the truth, if I had met him off the bat, I probably would have thought he was boring. I probably thought he was a little milk toast and almost too sweet for me. But the contrast between my husband and the guy that I dated before him was so great. I thought, well, I got that one wrong. This one's the opposite. Maybe I'm more suited to that. We got married within 6 months, and I'm telling you, I love my husband with every ounce of my being. He is the best thing that will ever happen to me on this earth. That is my earthly gift. I thank God every day for him. And I know that sounds Pollyannish, but I really do. He's a wonderful human being. But you know what? I would have never recognized all of his wonderful qualities. I would have overlooked him and thought he was boring, probably, if I didn't have the contrast of how horrible that guy was before. And for even after I got married, I was like, why did I even date that guy? This is ridiculous. I mean, but then I was like, well, there you go. I had to realize what kind of a match is best for me, and that's what the guy taught me. And so it's like, in a way, I almost can thank him for my husband, because I needed that contrast. I needed to go through something bad to realize what something good was. So yeah, I think about that a lot.
I really like that. I like that story. That was really good, and I'm gonna kind of add something to that. I think the only way that growth, I guess so to speak, can occur is you have to be lower than you like you have to go up type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And especially when you begin looking
I'm
back,
with you.
like my motto is if you're looking back on the past, you better be in a worse position then. If you're in a worse position now, obviously you're doing something, you need to change something now. But
Yeah.
and then the
I
future, you
agree.
want to envision it and you want it to be better for you. And I think it's just a constant process. And in the present, you want to remember to live in the present in that moment. And then I think I'm going to kind of tie this into your reflexes. You want to be able to react to what comes your way, especially opportunities.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I I really like that uh you that story was really good, and I like that you mentioned that. So I think we're beginning to kind of wrap up here, and I kind of want to get your final thoughts. What do you want the audience to remember about Christina Stanton? What do you want them to remember about you?
So I think even though we didn't go too far into the 9/11 story, um, I'm going to tie it up with 9/11 was terrible. I mean, having to say goodbye to life at age 31, and I thought I was dying at age 31 when I thought, God, I hadn't even started life. This sucks. I haven't done anything. But I'm talking when you were saying you have to get down low. That for me was low. I became really, really depressed after 9/11 for a long time. I suffer from PTSD. I didn't know what PTSD was, right? And but from there I kind of asked some questions to myself. I was like, what did I want out of life? What did I want for this life? Who am I? And where do I fit in life on this earth? Maybe the stuff that I was wanting before 9/11 is not worthy goals of me and really what's a bigger picture of life. And so I had to get down really low to ask myself some questions that I'd never asked myself before. And those were, again, big picture, what I want out of life. Who am I? What can I do for this life? What can I contribute? What kind of messaging do I want for me? And maybe I would have asked that, but maybe when I was 50, maybe now. But I just asked those kind of questions earlier because I thought I would have a shorter life. And I thought, well, if I can have a shorter life, I want it with purpose. So I guess I would say, you're right. You have to get to some low spots so you can figure things out. And even though I don't love it when I hear somebody hit a low point, because I don't wish that on anybody, it is true that it's you learn from your mistakes. And I was making a lot of mistakes before 9/11. 9/11 got me to a low point, and it forced my hand to set my needle somewhere else. And since then, even though of course I would never wish 9/11 on anybody and wish it never happened, for me in the aftermath, it taught me a lot of things. And again, don't like people go suffering, but we are all going to suffer in life. It's just the way it goes. Believe me, I'm 51. Everyone suffers to different degrees, and try to learn from your mistakes and try to see the meaning and growth in things and grow, because life is wonderful. Life is an adventure, but it's all about how you're gonna what lens you're looking through life. If you're not looking at I'm here to learn from what I just did and grow, it's going to be a long life, a sad life for you. So I'd almost like I guess for people just to remember my words there, that I wish the best for them, but learn from your mistakes. And I wish people a happy life. And you can get happy from your low points. You can learn and you can grow and you can get happy. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, there's always a better place that you can be. There's always better. And I mean, I think that
Yeah.
that's one of the
There's always
yeah,
hope. There's always
always
hope.
hope. And I think that's actually, I mean, I'm going to kind of wrap up with this. I think that's actually one of the benefits of the internet. I mean, yes, it obviously it affects mental health and stuff, but you can see that look, things can get better. And if you start looking at through that, I
Right.
think
I
it
agree with
can
you.
really help a lot of people. So yeah, thank you for coming on. It's really been a
Thanks,
pleasure. Thank
John.
you for educating me on.
I wish you the best, man. I really do. Wish you the
Thank you,
best.
and everyone.
You look a really awesome dude.
Thank you, and everyone. That is Christina Stanton. As you can tell, a very intelligent person. And tune into next week's episode. I have a great guest lined up for that as well. Thank you guys for listening. I could not do this without you guys. And we'll see you guys next week, and let's get after it. Hey everyone, if you liked this episode and would like to hear more, be sure to hit that subscribe or follow button. We release a new episode every Wednesday for you guys to listen to. Thank you guys so much for the support that you give. We could not have done this without you guys. If you would like to be a potential guest on the show, check out intelligentconvos.com, and there should be a form there for you guys to fill out. Thank you guys again, and let's get after it.